ways does your neurodiverse condition interact with other aspects of your identity? Examples include race, gender, or sexuality, and other physical and mental disabilities. I identify heavily with being disabled, whether it's involvement in Access STEM, supporting other people, with disabilities wherever possible, being a little bit more mindful of when I'm doing assignments, trying to make sure that I'm incorporating disability-focused designs, because I'm an informatics major and we work with design classes and products like that. I can think of a lot of situations where it interacts with like how I find kinship and see and empathize with people out in the world. I see a lot of interactions like riding public transit. I used to go down by the Mission a lot down in Pioneer Square. And I also worked up in Capitol Hill, kind of close to Kaiser Permanente. And so we'd have a good amount of ridership that was experiencing some kind of crisis, or they were on their way to alleviate some kind of crisis, and definitely felt strong empathy and putting myself in the place of people that are, experiencing just like the worst day ever, finding ways to cope with it because, by yelling expletives, or they're literally just trying to get to their meds and trying not to interact with anybody. They're just having knee-jerk reactions. It's definitely, places that I've been before. But as far as my own identity and my own limitations, yeah, I mean, it's just a lot of community seeking. How has my neurodiverse condition impacted adjustments to COVID-19 and the world in large, moving online? Has been net negative, net positive, or just neutral? Because I'm bipolar type 2, I have very large valleys, craters of depressive episodes. And so the initial stages of the COVID-19 shutdown were kind of felt like I had been practicing all my life for, with depressive episodes. Stay home, just try to get through the mundane, very little interactivity, keep to yourself, things to try to keep going. And I think that really carried me through when the initial stages of the pandemic hit. I was staying with my partner and some of her siblings, and we were all managing in different ways and had different effects kind of going on. But overall, the pandemic for me has been, it's been in situations that I can gain leverage on to kind of reset. So I was able to come back to UW. I was able to troubleshoot some of my medication. I was able to get into a place financially where I could focus on school exclusively. I was able to assist others that I cared about and that had done kindness to me during past episodes. It was also a way to gently get reintroduced into UW. Instructors were much more generous with their grading policies. I was able to find kinds of service that met with my schedule. I have a hard time finding mental health professionals that I connect with. And so being able to then turn to remote care options made it a lot easier if I was feeling super depressed, that I didn't have to get up and come all the way up to Seattle from Kent or from Auburn or from wherever I was staying. And likewise, being able to do the same thing for work and school opened up a lot of doors for me. I wasn't the most productive during those times. And there's a lot of other complications and strains on my overall mental health from trying to push through some of those things. But for the most part, I've been very fortunate.
Do you mind elaborating a little bit on what that process looked like for you and kind of what the transition was from like getting reinstated as a student at UW?
It's actually not the first time it's happened in higher education for me in general. After I graduated high school, I took a couple quarters off, enrolled at Green River College. I was there for about a year and tried to ignore a lot of the accommodations that kind of carried me through high school and ignored my conditions and my learning disability. Was there for about a year, and then I kind of bottomed out. Worked for a little while, various customer service jobs, odd jobs, just trying to make ends meet. Realized that wasn't for me. Attended Bellevue College for a year, again, completely unsupported, bottomed out again. Realized that I had to kind of start taking my conditions more seriously, started working at odd jobs again, this was before the Affordable Health Care Act. And so pre-existing conditions could be discriminated against, ADHD meds. and some help, whatever it looked like with my depressive episodes. Was able to enroll at North Seattle College while I was still getting some of those results back. Bottomed out again, came back to Green River a couple years later, had everything in place, started hitting 4.0 quarters after 4.0 quarters, worked with the administration there for some grade forgiveness. And so after, I think, a period of the 2-year college experience took me, I think it was over a process of 9 years that I finally got my act together and got into UW. I spent 2 quarters at UW, and I was in the worst depressive episode of my life. Tried to make an unreasonable workload work for class load, and just had my entire social safety net, mental health support network just completely dissipate on. First quarter was really low. Tried to push through it on second quarter and ended up having to take an emergency withdrawal. Then I spent about 2.5 years basically housing insecure, working through the depressive episode. Did a lot of couch surfing. I did end up getting work for a little bit of time after I finished after I withdrew at UW with the athletics department. And that gave me some connections for some odd jobs and some contract work, but eventually landed back at the Seattle College districts as an employee and worked my way up from there. It's weird that when you don't have any money or health insurance, that having money and health insurance will actually like make your life better and make your conditions more stable. Because of the kindness of my employers, taking kind of a chance on me and me kind of stepping up to the line, I was able to rally and put myself in position and finally get an appropriate diagnosis for my mood disorder, and finally get on a medication chain that worked. And for a little while, it was pretty scary. They put you a lot of the antipsychotics and a lot of the mood stabilizers have cognitive dulling. There was extreme bouts of dizziness. I lost parts of my language. I developed stutters. I developed tics. Wild cycles of suicide ideation, and massive periods of memory loss. But I gave myself 5 years to kind of cohesively work towards getting healthier. And about 4 years in, I found a mix that is actually a relatively low dosage that works pretty well for me. Right about then, I was able to get back to UW, applied for readmission to general registration. I spent the next 3 quarters working pretty hard diligently, and got into the competitive major of informatics. And that was definitely fulfilling to have that kind of closure to that part of my life. The medication side is really hard. And I just, kind of kept telling myself that if you can live with the symptoms, they can always dial it back later. They want to see if it's therapeutic. For a while, one of the diagnoses they were kind of playing around with was dysthymia, which is a very specific type of polar depression. The long and the short of it is that people with dysthymia, instead of having a titration period of 3 months, might have a titration period of 2 years. And so for a significant portion of time there, it felt really hopeless. It felt like they could give me a drug and either something would interrupt it, I wouldn't be able to see that doctor anymore, or best case scenario, I would get through the 2 years of the titration policy, then it would just not work for me. It takes a lot of conscious effort to just keep pushing through with medication. So setting boundaries and setting clear expectations of like what symptoms I was not willing to have were quicker ways to eliminate a lot of this kind of screwball approach to treatment. If I had to give advice for anybody that was starting on their mental health journey, and was going to potentially have outcomes kind of like I had, studies show that self-advocacy and self-involvement in treatment policies yield the best results. Keep a spreadsheet of all the medications that you tried, keep a spreadsheet of their benefits and their side effects, because you will be asked about them repeatedly. They'll ask you and try to put you on the same antidepressants, the same anti-anxiety meds over and over again. And if you don't like that doctor, go to another one. They'll start you over at the same spot beginning because they don't understand how a lot of those drugs work. It's up to you to come to a lot of these appointments with the agendas in place, with the footwork and legwork already done, to really get these more serious, long-lasting conditions under control, and just be prepared to deal with really long timelines and really disruptive side effects. What would an ideal school or work environment look like for you as a neurodivergent person? In a lot of ways, the stricter schedules of academia, the standardized lectures, the structure based around them, the deliverables is really reaffirming of a lot of my learning disability and conditions like that. General things like double time on tests, taking breaks during long lectures, things like that. Priority registration, so I can kind of plan out how my day will function, because I am on the stimulant twice a day. The long acting release doesn't really work for me, and so I'll have kind of bouts of productivity, and so I kind of have to plan my day around that. Okay, well, I'll be in class from this time to this time, and I'll be doing homework from this time to this time. If I need time before that, class starting at 10 or something like that, I'm more productive in the morning, because that's when I take my first dose to kind of get up and get moving. If I was able to kind of tailor schedules to meet that and still have the diversity of a full university experience, I definitely take that up. On the other hand, the unstructured approaches towards a lot of like academics that you're seeing, like in WGU and things like that, kind of go as you complete as you want. I've had very good success with taking incompletes during very harsh quarters where my mental health failed and was too stressed, or I've had a lot of success with grade forgiveness, going back and proving that during this time I wasn't healthy, and wiping my transcript clean in order to improve and still remain eligible for courses that I could still perform well in. There is a lot of academic red tape that gets in the way. Even my second attempt at Green River, I tried to apply for financial aid and I wasn't working at the time. And the federal government allows you to appeal based on medical exemption. So for reinstatement, as long as you could prove it. And I had to spend a lot of money out of pocket getting testing done that proved that I was sick and that now I'm under treatment. I'm talking like thousands of dollars when I was on minimum wage. The Disability Resource Center was really great. They were really opening, great for making accommodations, great for leading me through things. But when it came to appealing for reinstatement of financial aid, I was denied. And when I tried to investigate why, it was not met with any kind of logical or formal response. It was just a formal, you are not going to be reinstated. So when I tried to appeal it, the Disability Resource Center couldn't actually help me with that. They're more for interactions with courseworks and professors. I ended up talking with the vice president of the college, who very explicitly told me that there was just nothing that they were going to do to change that they had intentionally not chosen to give me financial aid status. This was in week 8 of the quarter. I had figured out the mental health balance. The workload was good, medication was good. I had demonstrable grades that were going to, and it did eventually lead to a 4.0 that quarter. So there was no risk of me losing eligibility after being reinstated again. I ended up having to take out a lot of short-term credit and like payday loans to pay off that quarter. So a lot of my ideal scenarios of school are things that basically anybody can benefit from: less red tape, financially more accessible, ability for life to happen. If you have one, what's your special interest? Would you describe the feeling of having a special interest to someone that does not have one? And what role does special interest play in your life? In high school, I was part of the Kent School District, and they have a athletic program that was started in the 80s to kind of foster connection with Japan, which was their judo program. And that carried me a lot through my teen years and early 20s. Large sense of community, high sense of discipline and structure. As my conditions interacted more with my adult life, and that became a little bit harder to kind of maintain. I guess my special interest is generally just research, being able to educate and better myself formally, to be able to approach a problem, dissect it to its small parts, see what professional responses are, and build up to that. It's how I approach a lot of things in life. It's ultimately what drove me towards informatics. Just trying to build established paths that not only I can take, but in ways, of the things that I've learned, I try to share and refer to other people. The ways of returning back to school, I've shared with friends and family, and later enrollments in their life have worked out pretty well. Yeah, without access to that kind of information, without the formalized way to better myself, not only would a lot of the situations in life where the carpet's been pulled out from under me and I've been completely blindsided by something, sometimes just researching them and getting better acquainted with what the problem was in its own way of managing it. And I know that's really abstract, but it's what's carried me through a lot of good times and bad times.
Do you mind elaborating a little bit on your work with Access STEM and how that relates to your interests?
Work with Access STEM was the workshops. One of the biggest workshops that we took place was ways to improve your skills in HTML in order to audit sites for accessibility. So that gave me a little bit of experience in general framework to interact with larger companies, work on soft skills a little bit, was able to help my colleagues a little bit on the assignments that we were working on, give me a little bit of a sense of community within Bellevue College, where I was at the time. Later on, we were part of like focus groups. And so that community became a little bit more closer knit, but it definitely was a force of good in my life in a time where things were just kind of still settling down. If you're formally diagnosed, how did your diagnosis change your outlook on yourself and your life? So my first diagnosis, it was, I think, in second grade. My mom was a strong advocate for early childhood education. She eventually became a teacher. She advocated. I was the baby of the family, and so she was used to some atypical neurodivergent diagnoses. I think of the 3 siblings of mine that she raised, and myself, 3 of us had ADHD. We had 2 of us have bipolar disorder. One of the 2 also having schizoaffective disorder. And then anxiety runs rampant through the rest of us. I had to get an adult diagnosis for consideration for accommodations from the Disability Resource Center. And I fought for a really long time trying to figure out what was going on with the mood disorder. I think over a period of the last 15 years, I've seen over 40 mental health professionals. Just had general conflicts with people, different financial situations. Some people would do the intake appointments and then do the therapy appointments and then do the psychiatrist appointments. And then you talk to them and then they say, oh, we don't do ADHD meds. And I would have had to pay out of pocket $200 for each individual appointment. In a lot of ways, the diagnosis were relief, especially the bipolar one. It's opened up doors of treatment. It's opened up accommodations for me. After spending a lot of my early 20s and late teens kind of rejecting diagnosis that kind of carried me through primary school, it's very clear to me now that I can't do it alone. And I wish a lot of the solutions that are offered to me now were accessible earlier and quicker. What or who has helped you the most in identifying your strengths and accepting identity as a neurodivergent person? I've had a few good mental health professionals who've explained things very clearly and how they experience things. I've had a couple of very good friends and partners that have also been neurodivergent for various reasons, and finding kinship in there and exploring kind of comparing notes really identifies. Almost to an effect, the barriers and detractors, limitations of other people have motivated me more. I've had partners who in fits of arguments, decided to try to wound me as much as they can. You know, scream at me. You know, when are you going to realize that you're too stupid to do well in school? And I carry a lot of those things. A lot of my, I made it to UW just to fail out. I had to use special accommodation to make tests work. I have to cheat a lot with Adderall or whatever like that to get to a functional level. I wear a lot of those as badges. They are testaments that I am committed to making this work. That no matter how many times it takes, no matter how many barriers that come up, I will adapt and I will make it through. What is a common feature of the world, the built environment, websites, classrooms, that's inaccessible to you that non-disabled people don't often think about twice about? I mean, books. It's something that I'm consciously trying to work on this year. I took a philosophy of language class this year, and it's my first philosophy class that I've taken. The texts are completely unapproachable for me. I have to use Spark Notes. I have to rely on the lectures. I have to talk to my classmates because I cannot get through some of what those old white men from like 1930 were saying. It's just too much of an effort. I can sit there and spend hour after hour rereading the same page, and it's just not going anywhere. There's so much information in the world that I wish I could read, spout out facts, and give reviews of, oh yeah, I read that. It's not easy for me. What are little tweaks you wish people could make when talking about neurodiversity, disability in general? I wish people just had more empathy. I wish they had the ability to take a moment and reflect on what they're actually saying and what they're doing to people. They don't necessarily have to be like in the know, although that would be great. Just having the willingness to give space, to give a little bit of grace for people, I think would go really far. Let's look for what's something you don't understand about neuro people. Like, what do you do with all that free time? Like, I'm not saying that I don't have a lot of free time that I, don't utilize properly or whatever like that, but just so much of the mental gymnastics and just actual like spoony theory, exhaustive ideas that run through your head. I know a little bit of that is just being an adult, but like from waking up until going to bed, my mind is just racing with things that I have to kind of make accommodations and make space for. And, if this doesn't work out for me, what am I going to do next? I have to make so many contingency plans. Okay, I'm going to set my alarm for 5 o'clock, but I'm really not going to probably wake up until, even as late as 8 o'clock or sometimes it's 10. How can I call out from work again the third time this week? What am I going to do because I missed this assignment? I'm really straining the relationship I have with this professor, forming well there. So much I feel of that is just kind of a given, where it was just like, oh, this was a slam dunk assignment. Didn't have to think about it until 2 hours before class. Did 30 minutes worth of work, put it away. And it's not so much that I'm envious of it or mad about it. It's just like, what else are you doing?